The final hero that I'd like to talk about is the youngest one by far. While Heracles is a few millennia old and King Arthur several hundred years old, this American hero is a mere 24 years old. In 1985, writer Alan Moore and artist Dave Gibbons sat down to create what will become the most critically acclaimed graphic novel of all time, Watchmen. Moore and Gibbons wrote Watchmen with the question in mind, what would superheroes like Superman and Batman actually be like in the real world? This question eventually created 6 unique characters, one of whom was described by Moore as a Batman type, a driven, vengeance-fueled vigilante. That character's name is Walter Joseph Kovacs, more commonly referred to as Rorschach. Rorschach is a different kind of American hero than one such as, say, Superman on many levels. An example that jumps to mind almost the instant one sees him is that while Superman dresses up in bright colors and fights off crime in broad daylight, Rorschach wears quite ordinary clothing and slinks about in the shadows in the dead of night. This is most likely due to the second difference between Rorschach and the Man of Steel. While Superman possesses powers that make him almost invincible, Rorschach is a completely ordinary man, like you or me, who has trained himself to his limits. More important than these surface-level qualities, however, is Rorschach's method and mindset in delivering justice. Superman and other famous heroes such as Batman and Captain America usually refrain from killing. Over Watchmen's year-long run, however, Rorschach, in no specific order here, he strangles muggers with a rag, he burns a child kidnapper alive, he crushes a drinking glass in a man's hand, drowns a mob boss in a prison toilet, tortures a 70-year-old retired villain, kills a serial rapist with the specific intent of spiting the police who outlawed his activities, tortures a policeman, shoots another policeman at point-blank range with a grappling gun, manages to traumatize a psychologist while in prison, partially blinds a teenager with his own cigarette, a feat accomplished at the age of 10, douses a prison inmate's face with boiling cookie fat, drops a villain down an elevator shaft, and electrocutes another prisoner. And these are all just the physical aspects of Rorschach's, well, justice. Rorschach is described by Alan Moore as an extremely right-wing, anti-communist, anti-liberal person who fosters a strong belief in moral absolutism. This means he sees the world in purely good and evil, black and white terms, with no middle ground, a characteristic that is physically displayed on his ink blot mask, which constantly shifts its black and white symmetrical patterns into various Rorschach test blots. Again, showing a difference from Superman, Rorschach, or Walter Kovacs, is mentally unstable. He's a psychopath, and understandably so. As a child, Kovacs accidentally walked in on his prostitute mother servicing a customer. When the customer storms off in a rage, Kovacs' mother slaps him and says,
I should have listened to everyone else! I should have had the abortion!
This incident turns Kovacs celibate. He never displays interest in any woman, nor does he ever seem to trust any woman, including his alluring ally, the Silk Spectre. Later on in his life, he tries to track down a kidnapped 6-year-old girl. He eventually discovers that the girl was butchered by her captor and fed to his 2 German shepherds. Upon discovering this crime, he tells his prison psychologist, it was Kovacs who said mother then, muffled under latex. It was Kovacs who closed his eyes. It was Rorschach who opened them again. He isn't the first here to make his masked persona his primary identity, that would be Batman, but it was never portrayed in so chilling and mind-scumbing a way. Moore bluntly describes his character's persona best.
You find that, yes, superheroes in the real world are kind of funny. They're also kind of scary. Because actually a person dressing in a mask and going around beating up criminals is a vigilante psychopath. That's what Batman is, in essence. And we came up with the character of Rorschach as a way of exploring what that Batman-type driven, vengeance-fueled vigilante would be like in the real world. And the short answer is a nutcase.
So, Rorschach is brutal, isolated, spiteful, law-breaking, and generally a jerk even to his colleagues and those that he can questionably call his friends. Why then is he often argued to be Watchmen's most popular character? While on tour promoting the movie, Watchmen artist Dave Gibbons said, "Well, I'm not surprised by Rorschach's popularity. There's something undeniably fascinating about people who stand for something very clear, no matter how deranged they may be. Even Hitler. But I think we show that that's not a healthy attitude." As a matter of fact, Rorschach's shattered psyche may endear him to readers that much more. His dark, brooding character was a kind that hadn't seen much attention, aside from Batman. And readers likely enjoyed the change of pace from Superman's internal, flag-waving, optimistic, goody-two-shoesness. There's a reason why Superman is sometimes mockingly referred to as the Big Blue Boy Scout. The scene in which he explains how he started to think of himself as Rorschach and not Kovacs is particularly dark and twisted, yet I find myself going back to read that chapter over and over again. The most likely reason for Rorschach's popularity might be a lot simpler than his mindset or philosophy. There's no scholarly way to say it, so I'll just say it. Rorschach is cool. He's the character who takes all the initiative in Watchmen, rallying his old allies and interrogating the scum of the underworld in order to advance his cause. He doesn't have any fancy Batman-esque gadgets, government funding, or superpower mutation to help him out. He masquerades as a prophet of doom by day, so if this lowlife of society could rise to have such an influence on his world, then why can't you or I do the same? In theory, anybody could become Rorschach, and I imagine that there would be many who would jump at the chance to do so. Why they'd want to, of course, is up to them, but the point is, Rorschach is cool because he doesn't let society's rules get in the way of his search for justice. He's a good guy who doesn't really act like one, a character more often referred to as an anti-hero. In fact, after Watchmen's popularity exploded, and therefore Rorschach's, the 1990s saw a surge in comic book anti-heroes, such as The Punisher, Spawn, and Deadpool, to name just a few. The popularity of anti-heroes still exists to this day, seen in TV shows such as 24 and House MD, and films such as Scarface, Sweeney Todd, and, according to some, Harry Potter. One could make the claim that Rorschach helped influence many of today's gritty, realistic protagonists, including the original anti-hero Batman. Despite his youth, and the fact that you would probably never ever want to meet him face to face, it's obvious that Rorschach has had a large influence on popular culture since his appearance and his death.